The Eagles have one of the most ideal scenarios staring them in the face. And it's actually more realistic than you might think, especially considering the latest injury news around Saquon Barkley and Landon Dickerson, although Washington hasn't been as lucky, and could be without a few key starters on Sunday. However, that didn't stop running back Brian Robinson from putting the Birds on notice beforehand. So let's talk about that as well as why the newest addition to Vic Fangio's defense should make a significant impact. But first, let's run it. Alright guys, everything is trending in the right direction for this Eagles team. I know, that's easy to say for a team that has a 10-game win streak, the number 6 offense in the league, and the number 1 defense in the league. Which, speaking of, Zack Baun is currently the top vote getter for inside linebacker for the Pro Bowl. So if you want to vote for him to stay at that spot, you have until December 23rd to cast your vote on X. Just enter his name along with hashtag Pro Bowl vote for it to count. The crazy part is that despite having the number 1 defense in the league in terms of total yards allowed and points per game allowed, Baun is the only dude leading his position on defense. Yes, I know, it's a popularity contest, but I still think that it just goes to show that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And yet somehow, Vic Fangio's unit is only about to get better, because the Eagles have officially activated Bryce Huff's 21-day practice window, with the 26-year-old's wrist getting closer to 100% and all signs are pointing toward a potential return ahead of the playoffs. And speaking of getting back in the game, shout out to Underdog for some of their best promos this holiday season. By the way, this one's for all you guys in Philly, because unfortunately, while the pick'ems aren't available in Pennsylvania yet, their draft leagues are. And right now, when you scan the QR code and use my code PHILLYSPECIAL, you can get up to $1,000 in bonus cash, where then you take it over to one of the weekly draft leagues. FYI, one of my personal favorites is the Wildcat, because a $3 entry with $8,000 to first doesn't sound like a bad payout. Anyway, you draft pretty much like you would for another fantasy league, where you'll end up starting 1 quarterback, 1 running back, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, and 1 flex. And like I've said previously, I've actually won quite a bit more money on the drafts than I have the pick'ems. Of course, when it comes to the pick'ems, Underdog is still offering a free pick in the lobby when you sign up and up to $1,000 bonus cash to anyone who joins using my code PHILLYSPECIAL. So come on, don't miss out on the official sponsor of the channel. I mean, victory is staring you in the face with all these promos. Again, all you got to do to get signed up to join the best option in fantasy sports is scan the QR code, check out the link in the description, and use my code PHILLYSPECIAL.
Bryce is a good player, and we look forward to getting him back. Just don't know when that quite will be quite yet.
Considering that Huff is still wearing a pretty massive cast, it might not be for a couple weeks that we see him. Which is fine, because I'm with you. I don't want to see Nolan Smith come off the field, especially how well he's played as of late. However, we all know depth plays a factor. So even though Bryce's 10 games didn't really amount to much with the 2.5 sacks, he was arguably somewhat effective in limited snaps. Because according to PFF, he graded out as the number 43 edge rusher out of 116 qualified players. And if you narrow that into specific pass rushing situations, he actually gets even better than that. Meaning put this dude in the comfortable position of only focusing on rushing the passer in very limited snaps to be that situational pass rusher that we know he can be effective. Remember, Huff had one of the best grades based on strictly rushing the passer in the NFL the last couple seasons. Again, I'm not calling for Huff to play significant snaps, but imagine one of those long third downs late in a playoff game where his only task is to get after the quarterback. I don't know, all I'm saying is it can't hurt to add another player to the rotation. Yet for those opposed, don't worry, just because Agent Zero might be back doesn't mean Fangio is opposed to sticking with 3 pass rushers for the playoffs.
Yes, we definitely can. It can be done. I've seen it done personally. There's no reason why you can't.
Honestly, whether or not Fangio decides to use him, I'll trust whichever option he decides to go with to get after the quarterback. Although on the topic of quarterback, Fox's Jay Glazer said Brandon Graham and Dom DeSandro went to Jalen's house during the bye week to tell him he needs to connect more with the team.
All right, this is pointless. Okay, it's time for plan B.
Okay, so the thing is, that never happened, as BG took to Instagram to comment lies. And then Jalen Hurts even provided his take.
There was a report that Brandon Graham and Big Dom came to your house during the bye week to talk to you about, I think it was connecting with your teammates. Is that true? And just what was that meeting like with Brandon that he kind of reached out to you like that?
It wasn't true.
First off, why does that even matter if that took place? I mean, that was 10 weeks ago. And also, let me ask you a serious question. If Big Dom went to Jalen Hurts' house, do you really think we would have heard about it?
Never rat on your friends, and always keep your mouth shut.
Look, I know, BG didn't exactly keep his mouth shut when he outed a potential rift between Jalen and AJ. And in this day and age especially, it's pretty hard to know what the truth is. But quite frankly, when it comes to this topic, who cares? I mean, ultimately, Jalen's doing whatever it takes to win, while proving to people that he can pass the ball effectively.
Yeah, I mean, I like completions. I like, I like all of those things. I I think there's something to it for sure.
The Eagles used empty sets throughout the course of this game to give Jalen Hurts some information before the snap, and it started on the very first snap of the game. The Eagles come out again in an empty set, meaning that Jalen Hurts is by himself in the backfield. And all you have to do is just survey the field and get an idea of how the defense is lining up to the way that you are lining up. And if you look at the bottom of the screen here, you've got Saquon Barkley lined up to the far left on the outside. Across from him is their top corner, Joey Porter Jr. You've got Devonta Smith in the slot. There's no one really across from him. The nearest defender is Nick Herbig, the pass rusher, the outside linebacker. So this is absolutely not man-to-man coverage, because the Steelers would be in trouble if this was man-to-man, right? So this is going to be some form of zone coverage. Now, teams typically come into a game with one or two empty checks. If they're not going to play man-to-man, then you'll usually have one zone coverage. Maybe you'll have two for most defenses, right? Well, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they love to play single high. They're one of the biggest cover three teams in football. You've got a single high look here from the defense, and so Jalen Hurts can make a pretty educated guess that he's going to get cover three here. So that's three deep defenders, four underneath, and really at the end of the day, it's going to be Grant Calcaterra running a double move, a stick nod route against an underneath zone defender here in Landon Roberts. And Grant Calcaterra, he's the athletic superior here in this matchup. He's the mismatch against Landon Roberts here. So as long as Calcaterra can run this route correctly, he's going to be able to get that separation. Jalen just has to hold that middle of the field safety, hold that post player. You can see as he drops back, he's staring to his left, trying to hold that safety there on that far hash, keep him away from this route from Grant Calcaterra. Then he layers this throw up over the linebacker, under the safety. 22 yards later, it's a first down. That all starts with that pre-snap recognition off the empty set.
It wouldn't surprise me if we saw a lot more of that against Washington on Sunday, and quite honestly, just moving forward altogether. Granted, according to Commanders running back Brian Robinson, it won't really matter what Philly does.
Honestly, they know us, we know them. Just going based off of first time we play, we just got to control all of the controllables on our end and play our best ball. That's literally all that matters. Because, based off the last game, we shot ourselves in the foot, multiple times. And, we feel like we are the better team, and we just got to go play better, and when we prepare, obviously we're going to do what we do, and we're going to attack them. We're going to go right at them, and we just got to we got to execute better than they execute. It's going to be one of those type of games. We just got to be on top of our game from start to finish. We can't, come out playing around with them. We just got to go out there and handle our business. I feel like if we come out and we do that, we will get the win.
This is really starting to feel like the Commanders' Super Bowl, especially when you look at the NFC playoff picture and see that they're trying to stay in front of Seattle and Atlanta, with certainly a realistic chance that they could even end up missing the playoffs if they're not careful. Or I guess there's still technically the tiniest of chances that they could win the NFC East, but that would take a monumental Eagles collapse over the final 3 weeks. Plus, the stakes are just as high for Philly. I don't want to make something more than it is, and yes, it's the NFL, so it's week by week, you take one game at a time, but the end of the season schedule sets up perfectly for the Eagles. For one, remember, this team doesn't have to hop on a plane for any of these remaining games, while also getting to host Dallas and the Giants in the final 2 weeks. Meanwhile, you got the Lions, who play at Chicago this week, and then at San Francisco in Week 17, who technically aren't out of it yet. Plus, obviously, we're not forgetting the grand finale hosting the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I'm not going to run through all 7 potential scenarios for the Birds, but let's just say if the Eagles win out, there's a better than 50% chance that the NFC runs through Philly. Heck, for the first time this season, the odds have shifted to the Birds having the highest odds to win the NFC. Of course, that makes sense when you think about Detroit already having lost more than 11 guys to IR, and now starting safety Brian Branch was listed as a DNP at practice with a calf injury. Plus, another thing to think about here is that if you look at all of the NFC teams in the playoffs, or at least the ones that are jockeying for position, they have brutal schedules at the end. Yet if the Eagles take care of business this week, that sets things up to be in an ideal situation heading into the holidays. By the way, the only team that has an easier schedule than Philly these last 3 weeks is the Tampa Bay Bucks. So considering that they're on a tear as of late, winning 4 in a row, they should most likely get the 3 seed. And let me just make this clear before I say it, the matchup earlier this year was forever ago. The heat was miserable, the team came out flat, and basically the team had not gathered together and weren't like they were now. But honestly, if there's a team that'd be the most difficult to play, I'd say it's the Bucks. But if the Birds have the 1 seed, then the earliest we'd host them would be in the NFC Championship game. Still, I'm going to say it because I know I'm going to get comments about it. I do think that we would beat them in the NFC Championship game. I'm just saying, out of all the potential opponents, I think the Bucs would be probably the most difficult. Anyway, just a little hypothetical because I got several DMs asking who would we want to play, who should we play, but I'm curious to hear from you guys. If you could pick right now, who is the ideal matchup for the Eagles? I'll tell you what is ideal, and that's seeing the Eagles injury report. Because Saquon Barkley said he's good to go and no concerns about the minor knee injury he suffered against the Steelers. And then Landon Dickerson, who also dealt with a knee, was seen doing this at practice.
Yeah, baby, I am feeling better.
Okay, technically, Landon got the day off, but the biggest assessment here is that if he had any kind of noteworthy knee injury, I highly doubt that he'd be doing that type of work. Honestly, it was great news all around except for Sidney Brown, as Brown was the only player listed with an actual injury for why he didn't practice. Now, hopefully he's able to clear the concussion protocol and get back, but seeing how violent of a hit it was last week wouldn't surprise me if he misses at least 1 week before he's back. Of course, on the flip side, Zack suffered a concussion last week for Washington and was held out of practice for the same reasons as he tries to clear the concussion protocol. So yeah, obviously that would be a significant loss to the Commies offense, in particular against this Eagles defense, since after all, not only does he rank second in targets, receptions, yards, and touchdowns, but Ertz was one of the lone bright spots for the Washington offense in the first contest. Oh yeah, and then by the way, Jeremy Chin is also trying to come back from a concussion. Yet he was listed as a limited participant, which makes it seem like Washington's guy who's second in tackles is more realistic to return. Finally, there's defensive tackle Jonathan Allen. After the Commies surprisingly activated his 21-day practice window as he's back quicker than expected from his torn pec injury. I mean, people thought he would be gone for the season, yet miraculously he's somehow back, so maybe not the best signs, although if we look into it a little bit further, it looks like based on beat reporter John Keim, it's more than likely he'll miss Philly and then play in the final 2 weeks. But yeah, anyone who knows anything about Washington realizes how big his presence would be on that defense. Still, nothing official, but I'll make sure to update on full game statuses on my game preview Saturday. Anyway, the other bit of info I should share is the other roster move where the Birds signed tight end Kevin Folch to the practice squad. Which, in case you're a little fuzzy on Folch, he was previously in Philly during training camp and during the preseason, after originally signing with the Carolina Panthers as an undrafted free agent this year, where then the 6'4", 250-pound New Haven product bounced around to the New York Jets practice squad before getting released, which is then when the Birds swooped in to claim him for camp. Yet, as we all know, ultimately he didn't make the team and was released. Now, considering the tight end situation with Grant Calcaterra, CJ Uzomah, and EJ Jenkins already on the active roster, and Dallas Goedert hopefully returning soon from his knee injury, this is most likely a short-term depth addition. By the way, I've gotten a few comments about Goedert and his timelines there, and although he technically wouldn't come back until probably the Giants game at the earliest, the fact that this passing game could be getting an extra weapon right as we go into the playoffs is huge. I'm telling you, everywhere that I look, I'm struggling to contain my excitement about what this team has a chance to do, but I know, one game at a time, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let me ask you this, not in a pessimistic way, but if there's one thing that you feel like could potentially trip up the Eagles, I know this is a weird backwards way of asking you, but one thing that you might be slightly concerned about, what would you say? Also, do me a favor, drop a like, make sure to subscribe, turn the notifications on. We are almost to 90,000 subscribers. I cannot thank you guys enough. Until next time, this has been the Philly Special.